This is a segment just for fun. I mean, we're going to put it in the regular release cycle, but it's just fun for us. We're going to talk about our first jobs in tech on today's Not So Critical Update. So this was inspired by a Reddit post I saw, and I saw it yesterday. I didn't see it 20 years ago. Somebody who said they were stuck on a VB6 problem programming in Microsoft Access. And I realized that in 2002, 2003, this is what I was doing. And it was one of my first programming jobs. I was actually working on, do you remember the handspring visors? The first like the very early handhelds with the monochrome display and use a little stylus to write on them.
What were they called?
Oh,
what were they called?
Handspring visor?
No. Not the Palm. Or was it Palm?
The Nokia 9000.
It was the Palm Pilot.
It was the Palm Pilot. The Palm Pilot.
Nokia 9000.
But there's a name for this. Fuck, what is the name for that device?
So here was the handspring visor that I worked on.
Oh my god.
Very cool. Oh my god. So you were doing VB6 on the handspring visor? No,
the handspring visor actually had its own operating system. But it would sync. You'd have to actually dock it, and it would sync with a Microsoft Access database, for example. So I wrote a bunch of applications that like sales reps or social workers would take out in the field, enter their information, then come home and sync it with their laptop. And then the laptop would like have in some cases, SQL Server database on it that would replicate with the master database. Like, it was crazy.
Do you know what I find fascinating? So I think the moral of this whole story is that nothing is new. Like, all these problems are old problems, and we think we're solving new things, but we're not really. There's very little actually new computer science happening. So my granddad was a programmer, and one time he showed me these stacks of like punch cards that he used to write, and they had like his handwritten notes on them, like pencil notes on them, saying what was going on, and he would feed them into a machine. And then years and years later, there was like the Unix came around, and if you've ever read any of the old Unix man pages, the manuals for different utilities, they're really good. Like, they are solving problems, and they're thinking ahead of how these things can be used, and solving the same shit that we're resolving now, because we don't know that they've already been solved in these other things. And I bet you anything that the punch cards that my grandfather used, he was thinking in the same way of like how to synchronize data and this kind of thing, just more slowly. That's the end of this.
So Peter, what was your first tech or IT or info job?
Well, so my job history is basically I got a job at an internet cafe, and then I did technical support for the ISP that provided the connectivity. And then I did a sysadmin job as kind of tech support. And then I got hired as a sysadmin, but then after 3 weeks, I got promoted to web developer because I figured out how to write 3 months, I think it was, a newsreader in PHP 3. And it was great. That kicked off my programming, my development. Yeah. It was so cool. It was so much fun. I started writing it in Perl using the CGI, and it was great. And then I discovered PHP, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I actually was kind of a cool thing. I had threaded a newsreader for Usenet in a web browser. It was a lot of fun. Queried the Usenet server directly, and I was reading about the NNTP protocol. Actually, that's redundant. NNTP. Network News Transfer
ATM protocol. Machine.
Yeah, that's right. Redundant acronym syndrome. It's RAS syndrome.
Mike?
Well,
Was that
Yeah.
your first tech job?
not. I can go back a little bit further, but what was yours, John?
Mine was a little bit more recent. Just a little
Yeah,
bit.
you little baby.
And
so anyway, last week, what happened? Come on, man.
so my first IT job was actually 5 years ago next month.
No
way,
way,
you
you got
and I've
a
been-
baby.
And I've been
Mark
in
is so
tech.
old and you're so young.
I've been in tech as a hobbyist for 20 years.
Okay.
And I was always told by others, like, you have to work with computers. Like, this is what you have to do. And I was like, I'm not going to work. I'm not a nerd. Okay. Don't label me like that. And I'm going to go be a rock
What?
star with my super cool band. And that didn't work out.
Were you in a band?
I was in a band.
What was it called?
I'm not going to say the name.
Oh,
But we released an album and
Prog rock.
we sold. No, it was like
Wait. Fuck the
pop
fuck up.
punk.
You sold albums?
We
You
had an
released
album. We released an
God.
album and from a studio and everything. I don't know if you guys were ever on MySpace.
Yeah.
We had
Of course.
6,000 followers on MySpace.
Wow.
Okay, so
Um,
for your doxing fans out there, you got some real research to do now.
Oh,
guys.
that's
If you
true.
can dig that shit up.
And so after a year or so, we actually got approached by a record label,
Holy shit!
which was really cool. But they
Nice.
offered us some pretty shitty like terms, and we basically said no. We'll make it on our own.
That's it.
Again,
That's it.
terrible idea.
Like the system.
And all throughout this time, I was still a techie, right? I love technology, and I love computers, and I just didn't want to work in it. I don't know why I had this weird picture painted in my head, but when I got back to America, I was dead set on breaking into the tech industry. You know, I was in the Bay Area originally when I moved back, and I started just applying for IT jobs, whatever I could find. And this small mom and pop break fix IT shop, they interviewed me. They were transitioning to an MSP during that time, and they needed extra help. And the same day that I interviewed with them, they called me up. The co-owner, she's the wife. She called me up, and she was like, "We want to offer you the job for shit pay." And I didn't have, I didn't go to college. I was completely self-taught. Everything was very patchy in terms of my knowledge. So it was the best day ever getting that call. And
Wow.
she was like, if you want to think it over, I told her, yeah. I was like, I accept the job, like right there on the call. Like, I was like, there's no hesitation. Give me this fucking job. Get me in there. And as they were transitioning to an MSP, I acted as the, first line of support and did a lot of field trips to, field work, running to people's homes and fixing their bullshit, crawling under their desks and setting up switches and patch cables and networking and everything and anything in between. And it was fucking terrible. Like, they were okay. Like, it wasn't a bad employer. It was just that the work was not glorious or it wasn't glamorous. But I learned a lot, and I learned the foundations of what would later be developed into, a successful security career.
In just 5 years, that's pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, I was very aggressive. I set financial goals for myself. I told myself, as soon as I get hired, the clock starts ticking to reach a certain goal within 5 years. I reached the goal in under 3 years, and then just kept setting new goals for myself and holding myself accountable. Oh, we just lost Mike.
What's Mike?
Oh,
Yeah, I
Mike's
don't
still
know.
here.
Mike
Let's
drop.
see what I can do about my
Mike-
camera. I'll try and get
Mike's
back.
Mike lights switched off.
Mike's gone dark.
Wait,
he
Mike,
didn't
are you
like
still
that
here?
story, John. Yeah.
Mike?
I heard him say something.
Mike?
Anyway.
Oh
yeah,
my
I'm still
we
here.
must
I'm just
be
trying to
recording.
fix my camera.
Okay.
Keep
Just
going.
want to make sure. That you're still recording.
Oh,
There he
there
is.
There he is.
Yep.
Hey.
This
I was
not
totally
so
expecting him to
real
be
officer.
standing there like with his I don't know, close off or something. It's just kind of like,
There we go.
Take this up.
Yeah.
Okay, there he is. Yeah,
cool. So yeah, I aggressively climbed the corporate ladder, absorbing any knowledge I could. I had some really good mentors through my time. I'd say Peter was one of them, actually. And still is.
Generous.
No, it's true. I don't, when I met you, when we went to RSA together, I shoehorned you into my car. I was like, I'm getting you into my car. Like, you're not taking cab. You're riding with me, Peter.
Yeah.
And I took this long scenic route to get to the restaurant where the whole company was going to eat, or everyone that was at RSA. And I was just pummeling Peter with questions. And because it was it's and we joke about this a lot, but you are that Peter Lowe, so it was a big deal to get an opportunity to talk to you in private.
Which is why he abducted you.
I literally kidnapped Peter for an hour. So yeah, it was definitely an end goal of mine was to get into security. I was a hacker at heart from a very young age and a tinkerer, so that was definitely the goal. But that was my first job. It wasn't very glamorous. It wasn't very cool, but it got me to where I am today.
Okay, I got a question for both of you, right? So we've got kind of similar stories, I think, that we kind of didn't really do the academic route, and we kind of picked things up on the job. I've always felt that has been there's been like a hole missing in my foundations, and there's people who have this knowledge, this kind of like algorithms and theories, and kind of, that base that I never had. I've gotten by and gotten to the point where it doesn't matter so much anymore, but it's always been a bit of a regret. How do you feel about this, Mike?
I feel the same exact way. Oh, sorry.
John.
Go ahead, Mike.
I never did until recently. I went to school. So I was trained in electronics in the Marine Corps, but not like IT or computer stuff. I think we had a computer with Lotus 1-2-3 on it in the armory that I worked in.
Oh wow!
That's
got still kicking around, isn't it?
I guess, I don't know. I spent 3 months selling cars or something, and then the first job I actually got was it was in 1999, doing year 2000 compliance research for hospitals. So we would get yes, you're welcome.
I would get the world.
Inventory lists from hospitals, and I would call every single manufacturer and say, by part number, will this have an issue? Will this have an issue? Will this have an issue?
Wow.
When that project ended in January, December 31st, 1999, I taught myself HTML and did this website for them.
Oh my God.
From the Internet Wayback Machine. And it had they were an engineering firm, so the background was a repeating image of graph paper with little blue squares.
God.
And this was, according to the Internet Wayback Machine,
is that Comic Sans?
Probably the first web project, Comic Sans. The first programming I ever did in my life was this website.
Amazing.
Wow.
So when I went back I went to college because I wanted to get my degree. So I went to college in 2001, I guess, University of Delaware. And I started in computer science, but I was already, my programming had advanced more by that point to the handspring visor stuff that I showed you. But I moved out of computer science because I would sit in the classes and just think I'm already working full time. I'm already programming. This isn't really helping me. And even through IT, I never did a lot of certifications. I never did any of that stuff. And it never felt like it bothered me. Now, when I'm specializing a little bit more in the data science, data analysis stuff, I do wish I had a more formal math training.
But that's the part. So that's the thing. I've always been able to justify it by saying to myself, well, I wouldn't have used it until that point because it wasn't until a lot later. I felt the same. Now I feel like I want to go back and take some time off and study. But now
I've thought the same thing.
Useful. Yeah.
So I have a couple
going in a different direction in my career anyway. But
to answer your question, Peter, from my point of view at least, I have a couple friends that went to college, got computer science degrees, and we've worked on projects before, just fun bullshit, and we do sort of pair programming, kind of shoddy pair programming, just through Discord, just sitting on Discord doing a screen share. And you know how little you are made aware of how little you know when you watch guys like this work.
Yeah, it's humbling, isn't it?
It is insane. So, for example, we did a hackathon together for a game called League of Legends. They gave us a API key to be able to call to the video game client, and basically they were like, create a companion app for League of Legends. So I did all the infra stuff because at heart I'm a system admin, just like you, Peter, and just like you, Mike. Like, we're not really coders. We can get by with a lot of Stack Overflow, but
I'm not sure I would say that about myself. Yeah, I think I was actual developer.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so I took care of I took care of the database and the infrastructure and set up the VM on DigitalOcean. I did everything and made sure everything is secure and all the accounts are properly configured, and then helped a little bit with the front end of this tool and watched them do the back end. And it was like magic being done. Now, of course, with enough Googling, enough research, I could have done the same thing they did, but it was that they sat there and talked about what would be the best way to do this, and everything was off the top of their head. It just gave a new insight to how little I know compared to someone with a traditional education in that specific field.
I guess there is a hint of that. So 2008 maybe, I wrote a web application, a Java application that were on a website to create a paintball field layout that could rotate in any direction in 3D.
Oh my
God. It was super cool. But at one point in the project, I realized, when you do a 3D rotation, the values oscillate between 1 and -1. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, that's what a sine wave is. And it finally, for the first time in my life, clicked oh, fuck, trigonometry. Got it. Yep. Just had to get there the long way. Maybe if I had the formal training, that wouldn't have been such a revelation to me. Right. I would have just known that going in.
I did the same thing for a job application one time. There was a thing about having to generate a cube, like an actual cube, and then rotate it in different things and tell you what was on each side if you did certain different rotations. And I found it very, very hard. I actually completed it after the time. Anyway, whatever. John, so I remember that feeling. So I was a sysadmin for a while, and I remember working for an ISP in Prague, telecom actually, and I used to get calls from people who wanted to set up their websites, and I would set up Matt's script archive, which is this Perl collection of scripts like form handlers and counters, CGI counters, and cool shit like that. And you install it and then modify a few configuration variables, and I would be, they would have a form handler. And I'd get calls from people, and they'd be like, oh, could you help me get this set up? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And they would be so thankful. They would be like, oh my God, this is absolute magic. Oh our website is so much better, like 1,000,000 times better. Thank you so much. You're an absolute wizard. And I just thought to myself, I'm cheating. I am not doing anything. I do not know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know how any of this works. But then when I actually figured out PHP and learned, I was a proper developer for a long time. There was still this level of, I would work with people and they would be talking about design patterns and factories and singletons and object-oriented versus functional programming. And I'd be like, I was completely lost. And I was thinking, shit, I just hacked up this web form, which at that point I knew how to build a web form. But I was still and there was this other level of people who were just whizzes, and they studied it and learned it, and I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. And then when I finally learned about that shit, now I'm working with data scientists who are talking about different types of models and training and the words I don't know anymore. There is always this other level. This imposter syndrome is such a thing, I think, in our industry, where there's always people who know shit that you don't know, and you will
that's
never
what
know.
you see, and that's what you see, right? You don't think about the I don't know how to even quantify this, the terabytes of knowledge that's stored in your brain that they don't know about. And they would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is that? And instead, we only see the negative, which is such a, I guess we're changing the subject because that's such a staple of imposter syndrome that I think everyone feels to a degree in the tech industry.
Well, I've certainly had it a lot. But
I think there's
a flip side. Sorry.
There's two different issues, though. One is like, if you might not know what the name of a programming concept is to understand the concept itself. With something like data science, which is what I'm running into, like that actually does require specialized knowledge. So I think that's a slightly different case.
Okay. All right. Yeah, fair enough. But it's still bumping into people who are doing different things with the there's a massive overlap between the security work that I'm doing and the threat intelligence research that I'm doing, and the data science, the real hardcore mathematical data science that's happening right next door to me, or is overlapping. But there's this flip side as well, where I see data scientists do things, and I think to myself, why the fuck are you doing it like that? There is a way you can do that 10 times easily with like 2 commands on the command line. Like, just back away from the keyboard for a second. Let me.
The sysadmin spills over, so it grabs the keyboard.
Stop it immediately.
I think that's the most disrespectful thing you can do.
Totally.
Take control. I'm driving now. Like,
yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you should never do that. It's just hard because you see them do like some operation in 20 steps, and it's like that's one line of grep or something like that.
Right. I was gonna say literally grep. Yeah.
So we're well over 20 minutes.
Wow.
I'm going to take an opportunity
to black out your camera.
Oh, I did again. I think it's actually overheating. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'll turn my camera back.
Ooh,
he's going to be mooning us this time, I bet.
My new camera, I should put a fan on it because it will overheat. They do. DSLRs and like big cameras, like they just, like Mike said, they just overheat. Yeah, oh yeah.
I think that's what's happening.
They run hot.
So I'm going to do 2 things. The first thing I'm going to do is remind everybody to, if you've lasted this long, for God's sake, join our Discord server, like and subscribe to the video. But I'm also going to take a picture of us right now. Everybody smile for the camera. So this is us actually recording the show right now. I'll post that in our Discord server. So if you want to see what happens when we produce the show, head over to Discord and find out. I will post that before this episode goes up. So you'll have to like scroll back through the history when you join, but it's cool. There's a lot of fun stuff there. All right. Good show. Thanks, guys.